Welcome to In the Green Room. I'm Lachlan Marquet. Today we're joined by Congressman Tim Scott, a Republican from South Carolina's 1st Congressional District. Congressman Scott has been very active in the fight for workers' rights. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, it's good to be with you.
Now, unions have worked to essentially paint the picture that what's good for the union or what's good for its leadership is good for the rank and file members. Yeah. You see some daylight there, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you look at the fact of the matter that if you want to strike, it's a classic example. The way that the bosses keep you in line is by saying that if you don't show up, you don't get paid. I'm not quite sure how that's good for the employees. I think when you don't even have a vote in striking, I'm not sure how that's good for the employees. But it certainly is good for the union because it gives them a great leverage to bargain with the employer about what they want for the union and not necessarily for the employees.
Now, you've introduced legislation called the Employee Rights Act. Can you describe how it would improve workers' rights?
I think it empowers all employees to be a part of the process of making the decisions that are necessary to say that this workplace is a positive work environment for me, the employee. When you think about the opportunity to recertify your union every 3 years, here's a great opportunity for the people who are now presently employed at the company to make a decision whether or not they want to be a member of the union. When you look at the numbers, less than 10% of the folks that are currently employed at a workplace actually voted to have that union. So if you had an opportunity every 3 years to say, this is a good thing, it's working in my benefit, let's do it again. That's a wonderful opportunity, and it empowers employees. And for what we're looking for, honestly, in the end, is how do we empower the individual, not the apparatus around the individual, but the individual.
So what are the reactions you've gotten to the legislation from union leadership and then from the union members themselves?
You know, most of the reaction that I've received from the leadership of unions has been very, very negative. They see me as becoming the anti-union legislator in America, especially in the South. And I just tell them that I'm not really anti-unions, I'm pro-workers. The employees, interestingly enough, the longer you have to talk about the legislation, whether it's HR 2587 or the ERA, you find that they're saying that's not so bad after all. And when you look at the numbers declining of the union participation in private sector America, you think maybe there's something in the water that's good. And so we keep talking about Motor City South. How do we find a way to use our right to work laws in a way that produces a better workforce and a stronger exporting opportunity for America? I think it all works together.
Now, are government unions and private sector unions different in nature? And if so, how should that affect or inform labor policy?
I'm not sure that there's a dramatic difference. I am very much in opposition to public sector employees being members of unions carte blanche. I think it's really bad for the taxpayers. It's almost like not only do you get taxed to provide the salaries and the benefits, then there's unions that may actually add more red tape to the process of making decisions and add more cost to it. I probably take a stronger stance in opposition to payroll deduction of union dues in the public sector. We totally disagree with that. We think it's a bad idea anywhere, but certainly in public sector. I think Scott Walker in Wisconsin has proven that when you don't allow for payroll deduction, you find yourself in a stronger position because 78% of the dues paying members have dropped off.
Now, South Carolina is very attuned to the actions of the National Labor Relations Board after it sued Boeing for opening a non-union plant in South Carolina. What do you make of the resolution of that suit, and how do you plan on going forward?
Well, the resolution is a sigh of relief. We're thankful that it's over. How it was resolved is still, for me, it's like getting hit in the side a little bit. It seems to me that there was a negotiation that kept the 737 MAX in Washington State in order to appease the NLRB and the union members to keep the 787 and the North Charleston plant open. I'm not quite sure that it's extortion, but it's a word that I've become familiar with.
Do the president's constitutionally questionable appointments to the NLRB cast doubt on the board's legitimacy?
Well, the board is just not legitimate, period. So, I mean, let's be clear on that part. I think the recess appointments are only reinforcing the fact of the illegitimacy of the board. But the truth is, if the pro forma session was good enough to pass the payroll tax bill, it certainly is good enough to be in session, and therefore any recess appointments would be unconstitutional and just wrong. The fact of the matter is that this is not about finding a way to have the NLRB becoming the impartial referee again. This is about how to get reelected for our president and how to raise money from the union members.
Finally, on a more personal note, can you describe how you came to conservatism?
You know, I think my mama raised me right is probably the easiest answer, to be honest with you. If you look consistently At where I've come from, you'll find that anyone who believes in entrepreneurship, they ought to take a serious look at conservatism. Anyone who believes that the individual's responsibility to improve their community and not vice versa should be looking at conservatism. Anyone who believes in a Judeo-Christian foundation of this nation, historically speaking, you ought to lend yourself towards conservatism. And anyone who believes that the founding fathers of our country wanted to free the individual and not enslave the individual, you ought to be looking at conservatism.